Welcome to an overview of the SDK for StreamSets. In our overview, we will explore what StreamSets SDK is and why we would want to use it. Finally, we will look at some resources where we can find additional information. Okay, so what is the StreamSets SDK for Python? It is a Python 3 interface to StreamSets products. That is, Control Hub, Transformer, data collectors, and can be used with the StreamSets test framework, which is based on PyTest. We'll cover how to install the SDK in the Getting Started video. It is recommended to have experience of the StreamSets user interface to be able to use the SDK, but it is not a requirement. For example, to find out what a simple property does, you may need to build a pipeline to find out how it works. Anything that can be done in the UI, you should be able to do via the SDK. You get the SDK free when you are provided with StreamSets. The SDK is used by more than 30 customers so far, and this figure is constantly increasing. Why would we use the SDK? Various use case examples are highlighted outside of this video as links, but some things do lend themselves for scripting. Creating. If we are creating lots of pipelines with multiple parameters, put them in a programmatic loop, for example, and create hundreds of different pipelines with different values for the parameters and run them automatically. Inspecting. You could inspect hundreds of pipelines and check if they're conforming to security standards, to naming standards, to authentication standards, or missing labels. How many are using trash as destination, etc. You can, for example, modify all pipelines that use Amazon S3 as an origin or destination and move them all to Google Cloud automatically. You could programmatically check if any of those pipelines have jobs. You could stop the jobs, delete those jobs, recreate those jobs, all under the newly created pipelines using the SDK. Validating. Again, validating naming standards, connections, stage details, etc. The SDK is more maintainable than JSON files resulting from curl calls to the REST API. Let's look at an example. Here is a simple pipeline with only two stages, an origin and a destination. If we exported this pipeline, we would get 1,251 lines of JSON code. To recreate the equivalent pipeline using the SDK will involve far less lines. 10 lines in fact, with the first 3 or 4 being common across the creation of a pipeline. Let's look at some resources that are available. The first is the documentation. From StreamSets.com, click on Documentation. There is an SDK version of the documentation under Platform and a corresponding documentation link for the on-prem legacy version. We'll look under the latest platform version of the SDK documentation. There is help on how to set up your environment in StreamSets. Here we can see the SDK commands needed to do this. The same applies to deployments, to building pipelines, fragments, running and creating jobs, users and groups, and so on. Other resources include accessing SDK tutorials stored in GitHub. Click on the GitHub tutorial link. We are shown here how to create a pipeline on the assumption that a data collector exists. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.